in Alabama anymore. Where will they go to find Alabama players in the NFL?
I'll have to look at other games. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Football Outsiders live stream for Wednesday. I'm Aaron Schatz, the editor-in-chief of Football Outsiders, and you've missed some good discussion of the 506 sports maps of this weekend's games. I am joined by Mike Tanier, as always. We are also joined by Cale Clinton this week to talk about football. This is Wednesday. This is the Ask Me Anything show. So we've got some questions from social media, and you can also ask questions all throughout the show. If you're watching us on Twitch or YouTube, you can ask questions in the comments, and we'll get those. You could also watch this show, of course, on Facebook Live and on Twitter, and in the little widget that we now have in the upper right corner of Football Outsiders. So please make sure you watch us every weekday at 1 p.m. So we were just discussing, first of all, how bad Fox's choice of games at 1 p.m. is for this week. Ugh. It's a Fox doubleheader, which means everybody is getting one of these four games. San Francisco at Chicago, Philadelphia at Detroit, Carolina at Atlanta, or Rams at Houston.
Bang, marry, kill, Cal. What are you doing with these games?
I'm marrying that Eagles-Lions game. Dan Campbell's something's going his way at some point. It needs to happen. I think I'm banging 49ers Bears solely for the maybe we'll get some Lance Fields storyline in there. Might get some rookie quarterback head to head. But yeah, this is a rough slate top to bottom. This is a big red zone weekend.
Yeah, this is a big red zone weekend.
Right. Your AFC games, you do get Tennessee versus Indianapolis in the 1 o'clock window. You also get Browns Steelers. That's interesting in the 1 o'clock window.
Right. That's what's going to most of America because Pittsburgh still has a very large fan base.
Large fan base. But overall, this is the time of year. There's a lot of baseball going on. A lot of the bye weeks are going on. Big games on Thursday night this week. So, go trick-or-treating with your kids if you're not like us and you work. NFL is your job.
Crazy football people. I guess it's a good trick-or-treating weekend, but it's especially a good trick-or-treating weekend in the 1 o'clock hour. You want to go trick-or-treating early.
Yeah.
The 4 o'clock hour has Patriots, Chargers, and then even better than that, Buccaneers, Saints.
Good, though? Are you excited for Buccaneers Saints?
I mean, the Saints are a top 10 team by DVOA. They have a really good defense. Last year, they clobbered the Buccaneers. Then the Buccaneers got their revenge in the playoffs. I mean, that's a good rivalry.
Yeah, I mean, there was a week one surprise for the Saints last year, I think. It was a week one surprise against the Packers this year. Have you seen their offense?
It sort of fits and starts, but it's not horrible.
I think it's one of those ones, I don't know where it's at DVOA, but they've run the fewest plays in the NFL.
20th. I think they've run the most run plays, and they're not passing the ball very much.
Right. They have the fewest. I know they have the fewest passing plays per game in the NFL, and they're like in the bottom 5 in like total plays run. And that's just not healthy for a team that's a playoff team offensively. They don't sustain any kind of drives. They don't have a lot of big play capability either.
They'll be fresh at least. No reps. That Pats Chargers game is somewhat interesting to me. This might be New England's opportunity to kind of get back in the larger playoff picture. After this will also be, if they win this, their first win against a non-rookie quarterback. But last year, this game came down to a 45-0 throttle.
Oh, it was the colossal special teams disaster for the Chargers.
And despite all the upgrades they've made, LA is still 32nd in special teams DVOA.
Right.
Yeah, this is a big DVOA test because DVOA, like a lot of the other advanced metrics on the web, has the Chargers much lower than conventional wisdom.
Yep.
So it actually has the Patriots higher than the Chargers now.
Yeah.
And if we had the opponent adjustments at 100%, they would probably be tied.
Right.
But, I mean, I actually made Patriots plus 5.5 my best bet of the week because that's a big line.
That's a lot to give away. That's a lot to give away.
Yeah, I don't hate them at plus 5.5 because they've played all their quality opponents relatively tough, except for, I believe, the Saints.
Except for the Saints. Yep.
Right. And, all those hidden advantages. I'm sure you do DVOA, so you've looked at it. the Patriots are like 14th or 15th at everything.
Yes.
So it's almost like this nice flat line of, well, we beat the Jets a couple times, but we got the crap kicked out of us by a couple other teams, etc. But, we don't have that pressing weakness. Nowhere along the way I say this is the weakness. Where, again, when we talk about the Chargers, we can talk about their run defense. We can talk about their special teams. And those are weaknesses that could hurt them in, I guess, a trap kind of game.
Yeah, the Patriots do not have a particular weakness. I mean, I think their biggest weakness is a player. I think their biggest weakness is Jalen Mills.
Okay.
Because Jalen Mills has to cover either Mike Williams or Keenan Allen in this game. That's their biggest weakness.
He will give up 2 touchdowns, but then he will come up on 4th and 2 on a swing pass and tackle Ekeler. That's a Jalen Mills experience.
Yeah.
Like this big play at this one critical moment, you're like, where'd that come from? And then you're like dealing with him the rest of the game.
Jonathan Jones out too. I mean,
Jonathan Jones out. Yeah,
it's good that they don't have that level of depth though. Like it really is. It's Keenan and Mike Williams in the passing game. They don't have to worry about enough. Like J.C. Jackson, you can give a little bit of help from the safeties up top. I don't know how is Devin McCourty still banged up.
They don't know whether Devin McCourty is going to play this week.
That'll be a big factor, I think. But I mean, yeah, at least they're not dealing with like this big like multiplicity of Chargers.
Yeah, Josh Palmer, I think the rookie is like their third receiver, and then Jalen Guyton. It's definitely mostly those top 2 guys.
Yeah, 2 you got to worry about, and that's
so I think the Patriots Chargers. I'm not just saying this because I'm a Patriots fan. I think that's a particularly interesting game because of the way that because the Patriots also they want to run this run first offense. But their run blocking has been pretty bad all year. Mm-hmm. But then their run blocking was much, much better last week. And you can say that's the Jets, but run defense has been the one thing the Jets have been good at in the last 3 years.
Yeah, and they have good guys up front, but it was just they look 2 steps slower than the Patriots. And the Patriots are not the greatest show on turf.
Right. But the Chargers' run defense is going to get pushed around.
Right.
By the Patriots should be pushed around by the Patriots run offense.
Right.
But then, like I said, that Chargers passing game against the Patriots could use Stephon Gilmore.
Yeah. You know who probably doesn't need Stephon Gilmore anymore? The Carolina Panthers. They're not
because they no longer seem like they're serious playoff contenders.
They do not seem like that. And the Packers are probably kicking themselves saying, why didn't we grab this guy? And the Patriots could have kept them. And we could probably make a nice list of 4 or 5 other teams that'd be very happy with Gilmore.
I mean, from all indications, psychologically, just the way he felt about his contract, the Patriots couldn't have kept him.
Right.
Like, he wasn't going to come back and play for them. But I fully agree with you. I was surprised when they made the trade that it was Carolina that bid the highest.
Right.
Like Green Bay could so use him. And Green Bay is such a more serious playoff contender right now. Carolina is down to 26th in DVOA, and they benched Sam Darnold. Like, I think Darnold will start again this week, but how many more bad games before they just go with P.J. Walker and they're on the hook for Darnold's salary for next year?
It's becoming more and more like this. That was not a plan. That was not a feasible plan there. And I keep circling back to, then what is the plan? And please don't tell me the plan is Deshaun Watson, because that's not a plan. That's a hope. That's a dream. And
the word is that the Panthers have dropped out of that discussion.
Oh, okay.
The Houston Chronicle reported yesterday that the trade is done, except that Miami wants to know what the legal status would be on Watson before they pull the trigger. And the league wants to not tell them.
I want to know what the stock market's going to be in 6 months before come on.
I mean, I think I don't quite understand the league's desire to keep some sort of secret here. Like, right. I think that they should be pretty upfront about what the legal situation is, but they've clearly decided that's not what they're going to do. And I don't know if you can pull a trigger on a trade for this guy unless you say, look, we're out of it for this year. This trade is for next year anyway.
Right.
So let him get suspended for the rest of this year. We don't care.
Which is what Miami should be doing anyway. And the NFL.
It's a tough problem because obviously Watson is an upgrade on Tua. And I'm a big, if we should still be up in the air about Tua. It's not decided yet that he's terrible,
right?
But it doesn't matter. Watson's a huge upgrade. But do you really want him to be the face of your franchise right now?
Right.
But even still, like, I don't know how much more draft capital Miami can just afford to toss around at this point. Like, this is, I mean, the trade up with the Eagles is one thing, whatever. So what you will about that. Like, I think Jalen Waddle's still going to be very solid. I don't know if you trade what they traded up to get him, but now you're hemorrhaging more draft capital to get a player that, very possibly could go to prison and not play in the NFL ever again. And this team has way more rebuilding than it actually,
thought it did.
Especially
many of us thought they did.
Offensive line, especially a lot of the defensive side of the ball, especially in the front seven. This team is kind of a mess, and I don't think a Deshaun Watson, even if he plays, it feels like a much deeper structural issue at this point that can't just be saved with an all-pro quarterback that has a litany of legal cases against him at this point.
Right. We've seen Deshaun with a bad organization. He throws 30 touchdowns and they win 5 games. We've seen that. If that's what they're building there, then people have to be held accountable for what happened in the last couple of years.
But we all felt very positive about Brian Flores in the offseason after the.
I still do.
Right. Do you still feel very positive about Brian Flores?
Based on what, though?
Just as a head coach, I think he's got good command of a locker room. He the defensive scheme, especially, I think he does well, and he gets guys to sort of outpunch their weight class. Like he gets good things out of the players he's given to a certain degree, but I also just think he probably needs to change the scenery too. I think Miami just needs to really detonate things, give a guy a 3 to 5 year window to rebuild. Brian Flores could still be a good coach somewhere. Maybe get some time as a DC somewhere and then eventually take another head coaching job. But I think he has what it takes to be a leader of men, to be a head coach, to make proper decisions. It's just I don't think Miami's the place right now, in my opinion.
We talked about Flores as the one member of the Belichick tree who seemed to have success, and then this year happened.
It hasn't. And, he's not running around cursing people out like O'Brien or, acting like a goofball like the dude up with the Lions or anything like that. And yet, we talk about we don't know what Tua is yet, and we shouldn't bury Tua, and I agree. Tua is here in part because of Brian Flores, because he was getting benched multiple times, because of this whole "are you a captain or not" thing, because of the dueling coordinators who seem to only know 3 plays and 2 of them are RPOs. So if you are botching the quarterback situation, when the quarterback situation is the situation, and you're a defensive coach and the defense is regressing, I don't know what you're bringing to the table at that point to say, well, this is the success you're hanging your hat on.
Trexel says the Colts and the Titans is now only 0.5 in favor of the Colts.
Yeah.
How do we see this game going? And I will point out, by the way, that this was a Tennessee by 1 yesterday, and it is now the Vegas Insider odds consensus is pick'em. And I am surprised because conventional wisdom would say the Titans are much better than the Colts. I think this is a case of the odds makers not just looking at DVOA, but having their own methods that are similar to DVOA, and the odds makers are thinking more long-term than people who've seen the Titans for the last 2 games be really, really good for just the last 2 weeks.
Right.
And the odds makers are thinking long-term. But what do you think? We'll talk more about this game tomorrow when we'll do the matchup preview show, but I don't know. What do you guys think about Colts and Titans?
I will say it's up to Titans +1 right now on DraftKings. So that line is boogieing back and forth. You're right. I think the house and the public and me to a degree are having a hard time finding the level for both of these teams.
Look, let's start with the first thing, which is Carson Wentz has been better than I think we expected he would be, right? Carson Wentz has regressed to being an average quarterback. The Colts are 17th in pass offense DVOA. I think even, Mike, you've got to admit, that's better than you thought.
Yes. This isn't 2020 Wentz. It's not 2017 Wentz. it's 2019 Wentz, the year when
Yes.
the Eagles went 9-7, and we talked about how he didn't have any receivers, where you do see the high end of his game, the big plays down the field. And, of course, you do see the burp fumble or whatever we call that thing he did, during the bomb cyclone. But it bounces out. Big highs, big lows, it bounces out to an average QB.
The other interesting thing, first of all, these teams have already played.
Yes, week 3.
Right? So the Titans, this is a really good divisional matchup. Usually those you get at least one of those at the end of the season. Not this year. Both of them are in the first half of the year. Titans won, I think it was 25-16.
Yep.
And the Colts, shockingly, are the number 1 team in run defense DVOA.
Right.
But the best runner against them this year was Derrick Henry. He had like 120 rushing yards or something. So I don't think they're shutting him down.
No, and even last time they played in week 3, Derrick Henry, 28 carries, 113 yards.
Yep.
Kept him out of the end zone at least. But this is that time of year where Derrick Henry just becomes a snowball rolling down a mountain where it just keeps picking up speed more and more, like just keeps building snow. It's, he didn't have a exceptional performance last week in week 6, but he's still only 2 weeks removed from that monster game against the Bills. He's picking up steam this season. People are still rumbling about Derrick Henry MVP, oh boy conversation. It's getting to that time of year where I mean he's defied all conventional logic in my head. That certain number of carries you hit, you're supposed to have a level of
he has
drop-off.
completely defied the curse of 370. Yes, made me look like a fool.
I've also, I mentioned a couple weeks last time I was on here the regression in that 2,000-yard backseat. Everyone has seen a drop-off between like 25 and 40% of their total yards if they're even play a full slate of games. So he's defying everything. I'm not putting anything past Derrick Henry at this point. It probably ends up being a decent Titans win. I don't think Colts minus a half point is an accurate line for this at all. I don't know. It feels pretty one-sided Titans. I still also think like we're putting a lot of stock into the bomb cyclone Sunday night football game, and it feels like that might still be just a lot of like most recent game national television. We're putting a lot on this Colts team.
Yeah, but we're also putting a lot on the Titans based on the fact that they shut down the Kansas City offense, because the fact is until that game, their defense was not good.
Yes.
Right. And they still have injuries on that defense. In the week 3 matchup, they committed 3 turnovers. The Titans were marching down the field and turning the ball over, a couple interceptions, a couple of fumbles. And that was at the point when we were still saying, what's going on with their offense? Why don't they run play action? Some of the stuff like that. I think they've solved some of their problems on offense. Colts, of course, have solved problems on their offense. Wentz's ankles are better. They seem to figure out what they're doing. So it's tricky. Again, the reason why this line's moving all over, and I guess we're equivocating right now, it's tricky to find the level of both of these two teams against each other. I
will say I would, if you ask me like subjectively, like not what does the Football Outsiders FO plus picks pick. Subjectively, I would go Titans. I do feel like if you kind of adjust for the game in the monsoon and you kind of adjust for the game that the Titans played against the Jets without their starting wide receivers, and I do feel like the Titans are the better team.
Right.
But I think it's closer than conventional wisdom. I think this line is closer. Like most people would think this would be Titans by 4 or 5.
Right.
I think this line is probably closer to it than the conventional wisdom is. And Useful Baker, by the way, points out about Derrick Henry, outliers are going to outlier, and he is an outlier.
Yep. And he's an outlier, but his 2,000-yard season looked like it was going to be an outlier too. Most of the time, that's going to regress because it is the absolute pinnacle of what's possible. And then you fall back, but Henry plays.
He's not falling back.
Plays by different rules.
He's almost looking to repeat it at this point, which I mean, that's an outlier. That's insane.
It's kind of crazy, but their secondary is have all kinds of injuries, but the Colts receivers have all kinds of injuries. So no Paris Campbell. I don't know if T.Y. Hilton is healthy.
Right.
They were like throwing to Kiki Kuti last game.
Kiki.
Great Houston Texans of the recent past.
I love Kiki QT. They would run the play where he would go in motion 10 yards behind the line of scrimmage and stop. And then
for the Patriots, that turns into a touchdown pass.
Yes. Well, he didn't pass. He would just go the other direction. He would stop, lose all of his momentum, turn the other direction, and then get a swing pass thrown to him for 4 yards. It was one of my favorite plays in all of football.
Speaking of the Kansas City-Tennessee game, Jake Murray asks over Twitter, is Patrick Mahomes pressing because he knows his defense is so bad that he needs to score 21 points every drive?
I don't know. It seems like he's pressing, or is that just Mahomesing?
I mean, he does a lot of outside structure plays.
Yeah.
But hasn't he always done a lot of outside structure plays? I mean, they look worse now, like that interception he threw to Washington where you were like, oh, my God.
Right.
But he's always been a guy who did a lot of out of structure plays.
Right.
It's always worked for him, too. I mean, we've seen like the last couple of years, it's why so many people just fell in love with his game is that he was able to connect on a lot of these, just out of structure, on the run, like play at the Super Bowl where he's going horizontal to the ground, even though that didn't get turned for a touchdown. His just sheer ability to make those plays is what's made him such an incredibly special player.
Right.
And this year, a lot of that, getting into those turnover-worthy plays that are now turning into turnovers or just a lot of those plays just aren't connecting anymore. And I think there is obviously some pressure on a defense to because Kansas City's defense is so bad, he's got some sort of, onus on himself to actually get those plays done. But at the same time, I think that is he's always tried to go for sort of those death-defying stunts or just those really high-flying offensive plays. It's always just been in his game. It's just for the first time in 3 or 4 years, they're not translating into yards. They're translating into turnovers.
Yep. Here's the thing. Mike and I talked a lot last week about the question of whether sloppy play regresses to the mean. And obviously, the fact is analytics has shown that turnovers regress to the mean much more than yards.
Right.
But we certainly didn't see that last week. If it's going to regress, it hasn't happened yet. But the other thing is the yards are going away. Like, if you look at the last 3 weeks, the Kansas City offense, so I just filtered all turnovers out with DVOA.
Okay.
So this is just looking at getting the yards towards a first down, success rate, not including the penalty for turnovers. Over the last 3 weeks, and this is only 3 weeks, but over the last 3 weeks, Kansas City would be 12th. So it's not, for the first couple games, it was like, well, they're turning the ball over, but the yards and the converting first down is all still going as always. So full speed ahead. The last 3 weeks, especially last week against Tennessee, it's not full speed ahead. Even the yards are not there they usually are.
Right. It's hard to analyze because you will see they look like themselves, just the worst version of themselves.
LL Salerno asks, how much of a homer am I for betting on the Giants on Monday Night Football? And I believe the line is currently 10. It's currently Kansas City by 10.
Looking for it.
And, I guess I would pick Kansas City. I can tell you that the FO Plus picks have Kansas City, but not by a lot. FO Plus, by the way, remember, you can subscribe to either monthly or annually, and you get all of our fantasy tools and our picks against the spread. So make sure you subscribe to FO Plus to get all of our tools. I don't think you're that crazy. 10 is a pretty big line.
10's a big line. It's 9.5 right now, but it'll probably still be around 10. You can get it around 10. It's a big line. Giants defense is not bad. Giants defense has stopped some people along the way. So, and again, that Chiefs defense is so bad. I can see a scenario where Daniel Jones is able to throw screen passes for big gains, get his bomb completion or 2 per game, and possibly throw some other things in like his read options and keep it close. Upset seems crazy, but staying within 10, that seems reasonable.
I'd say 2 things. The first is I would feel a lot better about it if it was 10.5 or 11.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, I still don't know what the health status is on Kadarius Toney, Sterling Shepard.
Yes.
Slayton returned last week. Barkley. I mean, I think Barkley's entered the doesn't matter much zone, but the wide receivers do. And I don't know what the current health status is on the Giants wide receivers.
Don't tell the Giants fans. Do not tell Giants fans that Saquon's in the doesn't matter zone.
I know.
But you're right. I don't have a full update on that. If they've got several of those guys back, then yeah, I'm saying take that plus 9.5.
Speaking of whether we know he's available or not, did Pat Mahomes end up clearing concussion protocol?
He's in Andy Reid concussion protocol, which means he's fine. Don't ask any more questions. It's Andy Reid concussion protocol.
Says he feels fine. Apparently passed all tests.
See?
Well, no, I think the big question for this week as far as quarterbacks goes is Mayfield.
Yes.
I guess Prescott, but Mayfield.
He may be practicing as we speak. Allow me to look that up briefly. Feel free to talk over this guy.
No, here's another question, by the way. Slinksy YT asks, should I bet money on a Bills shutout on Sunday? That's an interesting one. I would want to know what the odds are. Over Miami, a shutout. Listen, as driver of the Tua is not as bad as you think he is bandwagon, I would not do that.
I mean, it's happened once this season already, hasn't it? They've already done it one time. I feel like usually in those.
But that was Brissett, wasn't it? That was Brissett when they shut out Miami.
That was Brissett, but yeah, even still in those rematches, some things usually shake differently. So I feel like if you go to 0 points in the first matchup, regardless of whether it was Brissett or not, there are points where Brissett has played a little bit better than Tua at points. But yeah, I think they've got to score at least a field goal. They've got to get at least in field goal territory. I think there's a pride thing at some point where you can't just settle to go, 70.
Be shut out by the same team twice in one season is really embarrassing.
Yes.
It's definitely the kind of thing where coaches kick field goals that make it seem like they've given up on winning just because they do not want to be shut out twice.
Agreed.
And I will point out, by the way, that I'm looking here at team DVOA. So this is not passing DVOA for quarterbacks because that only compares passing to passing. This is team DVOA, so I'm comparing to all plays. With Tua at quarterback, Miami is plus 8%. With Brissett at quarterback, there's minus 9%. There is a difference between those two guys.
Okay, that's fair. By the way, I can't find the shutout odds, and I have to go hunt them down. I'm seeing Dolphins under 1.5 total touchdowns at plus 125. That's tempting.
Yeah, that I like.
That's tempting. And there's a couple other props like that. Also, to go back a moment, Baker Mayfield, I don't think they've practiced yet, but he's expected to get starters reps today.
DJRM3 asks, as of right now, would you say that Joe Douglas fleeced the Seahawks in the Jamal Adams trade and fleeced Carolina in the Darnold trade?
Okay.
I mean, I think any compensation you're willing to get for Darnold is a plus because you had no intention of keeping him. You had Zach Wilson in the fold. You're not gonna, move like you were never gonna play Sam Darnold at that point. So I think moving on from him and getting any sort of compensation for him is a good thing. And the Jamal Adams trade just comes down to usage. Like Jamal Adams was not coming back to New York, and I get what Seattle was looking for at that point. Like maybe try and get some sort of like very physical Legion of Boom style safety in the mix. But he hasn't been anything in coverage. He's been
Peyton Manning was beside himself on the Manning cast that they were playing too deep with Jamal Adams. Like he was like, what are they doing? He just went on and on about it.
Right. It's funny because we also saw Troy Aikman pointing out Jamal Adams every time he was in coverage.
Yes.
A couple of weeks after we saw Troy Aikman let's say, ripping Sam Darnold every time he dropped back the pass. So Troy's on board with the Joe Douglas Express.
Yeah, I mean, you don't often see color commentators criticizing players the way Aikman was criticizing Jamal Adams. Like that is, that's pretty upfront. So yes, Joe Douglas, absolutely. Trade-wise, he has gotten value for the Jets. The question is, can they turn it into wins? The drafting has not been that great.
Right.
Zach Wilson, it's way too early to judge, but certainly, does not look good so far.
Right. Guys like Denzel Mims haven't come around. Perrine from last year. And that's the thing. Douglas was supposed to be the draft guy in Philly, and Roseman was like the trade guy. And now Douglas seems to have the trade guy stuff down. Now we have to see if he's got the draft guy stuff.
And then what they're going to do with Marcus May at this point.
Right. That's a quagmire.
Because, do you keep him as a piece for the rebuild or do you get something for him? Like, you got to decide the next week or so. So get out there and make a decision. I think I would trade him.
And May's gone back and forth saying, I want to stay. And his representation has been like, he doesn't want to stay. It's a quagmire right now as to what to do there.
So here's a question for you. Speaking of Joe Douglas's old team, Matt Noskow asked us before the show, if you were in charge of the Philadelphia Eagles draft, what would your strategy be with the 3 first-round picks? What positions do you like them to focus on, or do you trade the picks? And I will say, Useful Baker says, trading players for picks seems good until you see what players you draft with those picks. Well, I think you judge those two things differently, but yeah.
True. And also when you've traded Sam Darnold, it's like I got something for Sam Darnold. Right. That's a win. Adams, not quite so much, but yeah, a guy that is not performing adequately and we've got picks for it. Yeah. So yeah, if I'm Howie, I pick up the phone and I call Russell Wilson's people and the Seahawks with those picks and see how happy he is at the end of the season and see if that's actually a thing. I don't think it is. But in the event that you could say, hey, Russell, we've got Devontae Smith, we've got other speed, we got all these other things, I would look at that. If I'm picking with these picks, corner, edge, offensive line. And
interior offensive line, I think, right?
Interior offensive line, because you got to replace those guys. And that could come necessarily later, possibly. But I think that we need solutions at the end. I say we like I'm an Eagles guy, but I am.
It's okay. I know there are people who hate when we do that, but that's just part of fandom. You can say we.
Right. And also, I'm the GM right now. We just said that. So, but better in the secondary and better on the edge rush. And Eagles fans, I know I talk to you guys every day. We want linebackers. We want linebackers. You know how it is with linebackers in the first round. It's almost like running backs in the first round. But want to get some. If we have 3 first-round picks and there's day 2 picks, we flood the day 2 picks and get some other guys at positions like linebacker that have been a liability for over a decade.
Yeah, I think if this Indianapolis Carson Wentz situation shakes out where you do get that third, I think you do trade one of these down at least. You need bodies at this point. Philadelphia ranks 23rd in total defensive DVOA. At some point, top end talent's great, but this is also one of the deepest drafts in recent memory, just because of all the COVID opt-out shifting, getting that 5th year of extra play. It's a massive talent pool. You'll be able to pick up better talent than you would in more years later in this year's draft. So getting a Kyle Hamilton safety or getting a good quarterback, or getting some sort of offensive line help, all those are really good things. But at some point, you just need heads. You just need bodies. And I think this is a better draft than ever to get talent late.
I'm always a big fan of trading down until it gets to the point of ridiculousness, right? You don't need to turn your a first rounder through 8 trades into 27 seventh rounders. That doesn't help you. But trading down to get more picks in the 2nd and 3rd rounds,
right,
usually does help you. And I think that unless they can turn that into Russell Wilson,
right,
I do think, it would be good to take at least one of those first rounders and turn it into 2 second rounders or a second rounder and a first next year.
Right.
At some point, first is an embarrassment of riches.
I totally agree with you on the positions that they need. They need secondary, pretty badly.
Right. And there should
an
be
interior offensive line, because they have certain positions where they have good players, but those players are older.
Right.
Like Brooks and Kelsey on the offensive line.
Exactly. Whatever we do, don't do what the Dolphins did. I'm still not sure what the Dolphins did with all those picks, but don't do that.
Well, they haven't had all those picks yet. They still have them coming up.
The Dolphins?
They have Houston's pick, and they have Houston's pick in this next year's first round.
Okay, well, they gave one of them the Eagles.
They gave something to the Eagles for the move up for Waddle.
Yes.
Which is, again, like when you have a deep wide receiver draft, don't give up stuff to move up for a receiver when the next receiver who's going to be taken is probably just as good as the one you just moved up to take.
Yeah, and their teammates, the one you didn't take had more yards.
Jay Billings has a question from Twitter. What are your favorite numbers to look at before placing a bet? May I interest you in FO Plus, first of all?
Yes.
I mean, my favorite number to look at is, Dave or weighted DVOA, depending on what time it is during the season. And back to the Eagles, Reuter NFL says Hamilton Stingley. That's Darryl Stingley Jr. And then trade down a few stops to get Tyler Linderbaum, who's apparently Jason Kelsey Jr.
Okay.
If he's Jason Kelsey Jr., does that mean he has a brother who plays tight end? Because the Eagles could probably use that guy too.
The Eagles did draft the center from Alabama last year.
The Dolphins still have the 49ers first next season.
Oh, goodness.
Do they have 3 firsts next season or just 2?
They do not, because one of them went away. Give me
Maybe Houston one they traded to Philly.
Did Miami trade their own first to Philly?
No one can keep it straight anymore.
I think that Mike is looking it up, and then we'll look this up, and then we'll take the question about which stats you use.
Got it.
Dolphins future draft picks. Tell me, Google. I know I'm supposed to know this.
I think it was
all they have next year. The Dolphins only have the 49ers pick. The Dolphins traded their own pick to the Eagles. And all those Laramie Tunsil picks are gone now.
Oh, I thought there still was a Laramie Tunsil pick this year. So they have San Francisco's first. Okay.
They have San Francisco's first, and then they have a second, and they do have a third. They don't have a lot of XX draft capital, which is one of the issues that we keep circling back to with Deshaun Watson is you trade
what did they trade for Deshaun Watson? Basically, their next 3 first-rounders or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah. Well, one thing I look at, because as you know, Aaron, I'm a big fan of first quarter, first half plays. I'm always rolling through first quarter DVOA, first half DVOA, offense and defense, looking for little advantages, like the Green Bay Packers being 32nd in defense in the first quarter. If I decide I want to play the Cardinals, not for the whole game, for the first quarter. That's one I love. But I'm not going through our stats because I'm an FO Plus member, because I'm an FO employee. Look at turnover ratios and sacks a lot, because I'm always looking at possibilities the game is going to be a points off turnovers type of game because of a high number of sacks. Sacks correlate with turnovers, with interceptions and fumbles, etc. And I'm looking for chances to go over in games because the defenses are so good that they're going to generate points for the offenses.
In underdog situations, I don't hate looking at our third and fourth down DVOA metrics, especially down distance stuff, because you are looking for these teams to actually be able to, especially in underdog situations where you're looking for plus points, you're looking for these teams having an ability to extend drives and actually try and put themselves in a position to, at least kick field goals, at least put points on the board in some places. And if you look at our top, the most successful teams in the NFL are currently in our top 10 or top probably, once we get into 8, 9, 10, it gets a little bit more dicey, but top 5 for our all third and fourth down situations. Arizona at 1, Green Bay 2, Rams at 3, Bucks at 4, Chargers at 5. Very competent teams, especially Chargers, shaking out, things shaking out real early. They were a bit of a more hit or miss team in this situation. A lot of luck, especially on that fourth down. All their fourth downs went into play, but you also saw how that negatively affected them against the Ravens, where they couldn't get anything going. And all of a sudden they have their worst loss of the season because they can't get anything going. So it's a nice way to find some inequality.
I think the biggest thing for betting is to look longer term rather than short term. Short term is what fools you. The fact is, longer term is more predictive than short term. Over the long run. Obviously, there are certain situations where teams suddenly turn it around, and there are obviously injury situations. Like we know Seattle is a different team now than they were in the first 5 weeks of the season.
Right.
But for the most part, looking at a larger sample gives you better information than just the Titans kicked ass for the last 2 weeks. Because they did, right? Like the eye test tells you the Titans are super hot. Well, DVOA tells you that if you only look at the last 2 weeks, the Titans are the number two team in the league.
Right.
Matches the eye test for the last 2 weeks, no question. Right. Is that as predictive as looking at all 7 weeks?
I'll say this, Cale. When you look at something like fourth down success or third and long success, are you looking at that as saying this is an indicator to pick that team? Or do you look at the way I look at, like, say, a high turnover rate over the last couple of weeks, where it's like that's a chance they might be overvalued. A couple of high leverage plays are defining what they did, and they might be falling back.
I do think stuff like actually placing bets on games is so situational. Like you can look at so many different teams, and it just, it's tough to find a sort of catch-all formula to sort of, find these inefficiencies in the market or things like that.
Right.
But I do think there is something to be said about just like being able to sustain longer drives. You're putting yourself in a better position to win. But I do also agree with you that, like, in a situation like the Chargers, at some point you can't go 7 and 8 on fourth down 7 of 8 fourth downs forever. You got to find some place where they can sort of drop off. And that might be where you look at the other side of the ball where that gets matchup defend. You look at how those defenses defend third and fourth down.
Yeah, defense on third and fourth down definitely does tend to regress to your defense overall. So I think that's a good place to find teams that might be overvalued.
Cool.
Is teams that are like not good on defense on first and second, but really good on third down will tend to regress.
And being able to put those drives together is like can absolutely be the difference in a game. Can just be the difference in whether your team is able to put points on the board or not. So,
yeah, the third down thing on offense, at least what we've seen, is that it regresses less than the defensive third down thing.
Right. And of course, we have spread picks at Football Outsiders.
Yes, FO Plus does pick against the spread every week. So,
you can look at those.
Check that out. Again, you can get it monthly or annually, and I believe you can get a 7-day trial version so you can see everything we've got to offer, and you should check that out. And don't forget, again, to check out the live stream. Again, you're watching it now or you're listening to it afterwards on the FO Podcast Network. We're here every weekday at 1 p.m. Eastern, and Wednesday you can ask us questions. We take we take questions every day, but especially Wednesday, we take lots of questions. Here's another one that we got beforehand on the Twitter, which is from Jim Steckschulte. Which of the offensive-minded head coaching candidates should I hope becomes the next head coach of the Bears? And he brought up Eric Bieniemy, Brian Daboll, and Kellen Moore, all as examples. I
like Kellen Moore.
Interesting.
I like them all. I've seen now through 2 coaching staffs, Kellen Moore putting these things together that I find innovative in a variety of ways. Number of ways they're using their 2 running backs to get them opportunities, the amount of things that they do with pre-snap motion. And he's been doing it all, under the auspices of Jason Garrett and Mike McCarthy, 2 coaches, notorious offensive-oriented coaches, notorious for their 6-play game plan. So that's the thing I look at. It's like I'm impressed by that. And again, Bieniemy, we've been waiting for his chance. We want to see him get an opportunity. Daboll as well. There's going to be a lot of coaching opportunities. I'll see 3 of them get a job. If I'm picking them right now, the first guy I want to interview is Kellen Moore.
I was thinking Daboll just because I think Josh Allen and Justin Fields have a lot of similarities. Okay. And so you've seen what Daboll can do with Josh Allen, because he set up a similar offense for Fields, especially because what is our biggest criticism right now of the Chicago Bears? It's that the offense they have is not built around the quarterback that they have.
Right.
And Daboll will build an offense that's built around Fields' actual skills.
Yeah, as much as I like, I feel like it's really tough to replicate Chiefs' success, especially. I think Eric Bieniemy is going to be a great head coach wherever he ends up, if he ever ends up getting that opportunity, which I think I'd definitely like to see him get. But yeah, I still think it's Daboll. I still think that the 2020 season that he was able to put together the Bills is still one of the more impressive efforts we've ever seen. Just the, what the just complete shift in Josh Allen's total career. I do wonder if the Chicago roster as currently constructed would be able to facilitate a Daboll offense, because it completely shifted once Stephon Diggs got in the building and they actually had a star wide receiver. And I still don't really understand what's happened to Allen Robinson this year.
He's down this year, man.
Completely fallen off the face of the earth in what I thought would be a really big contract year for him, and we'd see him actually earn that big next contract, playing on the franchise tag. But yeah, I think Daboll is probably best equipped to actually handle Justin Fields as a quarterback, put him in the best position for success. But I still think, it's a lot deeper than just, what plays is Justin Fields running.
Right. Oh, gosh, yes. There's a lot of problems there. At the general management level, they have to make some decisions as well.
Yeah, definitely.
It is time for change in Chicago.
Yes.
And I don't want the fact that they're, 3-4? Like, they're going to be in the wild card hunt, and they should not allow that to blind their eyes to the fact that they need to make change.
That's that seventh wild card. There's going to be a lot of teams like, well, we got to try and reach for it. And I get that for the fans. And if you're a young team rising up, whatever, but the idea that we're going to have success at 8 and 9, that should not be a determining factor in the future.
Being the 7th seed is good for the fans and it's good for the players to get in a winning culture, but you don't want to make your future decisions about the management of the team based on the fact that you scored the 7th wild card.
Not with your 4th year running the team, with your second quarterback prospect that is wilting on the vine.
I just hope they don't end up getting the second straight Nickelodeon playoff broadcast game, because why are you doing that for the children? Why would you do that to
subject them to the Bears?
Oh, man.
Bears exposure for the children. That's not what they need.
Justin Fields could be the MVP.
Yeah. That'd be exciting. But you're right. 15 years from now, there will be no young football fans because they all watch the Nickelodeon games. I'm not watching that. There's fun stuff on YouTube.
Give the kids the Chiefs, man. Give the kids the Chiefs. Give them Mahomes.
Give them the Ravens.
Geek Robo says, random but related. I'm not sure what this is related to. Would you all take Brady's 600th touchdown ball or all the goodies they gave that guy? $1,000 gift cards, signed jerseys, Bitcoin, etc. The ball was valued at $500,000. So it's probably a dumb question.
What's a Bitcoin?
Do I really need? You're joking, right? You know what it is.
I kind of know. Yeah, let's just.
It's this thing that you kind of own on the computer, and the computer knows that you can't copy it, and it's worth money somehow.
Okay. Well, a couple of things. One is we're media, so we have to give the ball back. I couldn't even I caught a foul ball once in a baseball game. The guy came running to me you hand that back right now. So we would have to do that. But I would take swag. As a fan, I would take swag, but I think Scott Spratt said on the internet you should hold out for a golf outing.
Golfing with Brady, something that's not.
That's what he wanted.
Something that's not that you can't really spend money on.
Right.
Yeah, he said after the fact he wished he got a golf outing with Brady, but yeah, I think it ended up shaking out to everything that's been mentioned, multiple Mike Evans things, signed cleats and a signed jersey, a couple Brady jerseys and helmets. But I think the biggest thing is he's getting more or less $100,000 in straight crypto.
Yeah.
He's getting a Bitcoin, which is around 60 something K right now. And then Gronk also chipped in an extra 30K in stable coin.
It helps that I think both Brady and Gronk now have deals with crypto companies to do promotion.
Mm-hmm. But that basically shakes. Yeah,
I know. I'm an old person. I don't understand it either, dude.
But that basically just shakes out to all the memorabilia you could ask for. He also got 2 years worth of season tickets for Bucs games,
and you can sell
$1,000 at the team store. So it shakes out like, he's getting a decent, considerable value, especially considering he lost all this leverage the second he handed the ball back. I think I'd want, if this is directly sentimental to Brady, I feel like I would try and swindle some Patriot stuff out of him. Like there's got to be some good Pats like pieces that you could get some collateral on. Just try and get something out of that. I don't know. I don't think the Bucs memorabilia is going to have as much like long-term value. I think when we look back on Brady, depending on how long he ends up playing there, I think a lot of the Pat stuff, if you're looking in terms of the total value of the memorabilia, sentimentally for me, I'd rather have the Pat stuff, but I think also just monetarily, I think
once he plays 3 years for the San Francisco 49ers from ages 48 to 50, I don't know how much the Tampa Bay stuff is really going to work.
The middle period.
It's going to be a stopgap, yeah.
I'd ask for a 15-minute interview, exclusive, audio, video with Brady, and we're watching film together, so he can't give one-word answers. If I don't like if he's not explaining to me football for 15 minutes that we can use at Football Outsiders as content, that's like, you're not getting the ball back. So I want him to come in and be like, oh, this is how football works, Tanier. And I'll be like, yes, sir, and we put it on the site, and then he gets his ball back.
I would have just wanted the big cash payment. I'm simple like that. Just buy the thing back for me.
I'm trying to increase my profile here,
But I mean, I don't need a signed Brady jersey to prove that I caught it. I would just get video of it somehow from somebody taped the game, and I'd be like, keep that forever. Like, here's a picture of me getting the 600 touchdown ball.
Yeah, how many broadcast angles from the game have already caught that too? So
right,
that's easy for you.
I guess you could ask for that along with money. I'd like money and a DVD of showing me getting the ball from Mike Evans.
You could make an NFT out of it, right?
Yeah. In fact, I'm surprised that they haven't already. In fact, they probably already have, and we just don't know.
That's a thing that's real. Okay.
NFTs are a thing. I don't know why people pay for this stuff, but in a way, it's like, why do people pay for baseball cards, right? I mean, because of the way blockchain works, there is a rarity to Bitcoin, and there is a rarity to NFTs, and they are, one of a kind in a lot of ways. So in that way, it's the paying for a one of a kind digital thing is no different than paying for a one of a kind. There are only so many Billy Ripken swear word on the end of the back out there, right? I mean, people pay for rarity.
Yeah, we pay for lumps of rock that are yellow, that are rare. That's what we build our entire economy on. So
yes.
Yeah, people care more about digital profiles and things now, but we could also do a whole extra hour of us trying to figure out why this is important.
Yes,
and it would be
not just two old men and one youngster explain to them how blockchain works.
I know anything.
There are some people on analytics Twitter who are very knowledgeable about the whole NFT situation and the whole crypto situation, and I am not one of those people.
Right.
Ryan Pagnetti, the guy who used to work for the Eagles, and is now on Twitter, has a real interest in this.
Cool. I'll reach out to him.
We'll have him on the show to talk about football NFTs.
Cool.
Bonus question from Jake Murray that came on over the Twitter before we did the show. Do you feel bad for Dan Campbell?
Immensely.
Okay.
I'm going to a little fun off-season project for me is basically just going to be me equating Dan Campbell to Ted Lasso. It really is it feels like fish out of water, the whole thing going in. He felt too abrasive, too much of a stereotypical football guy going in. But the more and more that because I lampooned him essentially throughout, doing my year in quotes. I had a whole Dan Campbell section. He gave me enough material to do that in the 2 or 3 months in the time that he had been hired. Between the kneecap biting and the stuff talking about having a real line on the sidelines and a graveyard in the field, a whole bunch of different things. But the more I've read about him, the more coverage I've seen about him, this guy cares so much. Yeah. And he's also getting all of his players for the first time in however long. Matt Patricia had people popping champagne in the locker room after his last year, or the last week of his first year in Detroit, because players just knew they were never coming back to Detroit. They hated this. It was a miserable thing. People seem to really like Dan Campbell. Think he's a genuine guy. And I respect everything that he's done in terms of just trying to go out and win football games. Like the aggressiveness on fourth down to go for it in the Vikings game, putting the Ravens to the brink and needing a historic field goal to, clutch that one out. And now in the first two series of the Rams game where get the touchdown, go for the onside kick, you run two fake punts in the game. I just wish he kept his foot on the gas instead of doing the, run the clock down, try and draw the Rams off sides and go and kick the field goal. Like, keep your foot on the gas. Like, keep your foot on their throats. I want this team to win so badly just for Dan Campbell because he cares. And I could talk about this for a while, but I mean, I think if he gets some good – and I even like what Anthony Lynn's been doing offensively, but I think if Dan Campbell gets some really, really strong coordinators in the building – and Dan Campbell just takes over as sort of the rah-rah guy and just becomes a really good locker room presence. Mm-hmm. And, that'll also take a roster around them that can facilitate the talent. But I love this team. I've become more and more infatuated with the Dan Campbell kneecap biters as the season's gone on.
I feel bad for him because he didn't ask for, record-setting field goals to be kicked against him.
Right.
He has no control over that. I feel a little bad because they're going to end up with the number one pick in a year with no good quarterback.
Right.
On the other hand, he did take this job. He did know what he was getting into. He knew he was taking over a losing team.
Right.
So in that sense, I don't feel bad for him. He knew there was rebuilding to come.
Well, he's talking about kneecaps in his opponent, the Philadelphia Eagles. Nick Sirianni is talking about flowers growing in the locker room.
Yeah,
what's the order and soil? It's like preschool in the Eagles. So we talked about this beforehand, but this could be the chance for Dan Campbell because kneecap biting trumps flower growing.
In the NFL, it usually does.
Yes, RPS.
All right, one more question before we go. We sort of talked about this a little already, but let's talk just to answer. Jay Billing says, I laid the points with Sam Darnold on the road last week. Never again. What is their long-term solution at quarterback? So, I mean, we've talked about this a little. They are stuck with Darnold for next year because they picked up the option.
Yep.
And this is a draft that doesn't have – I think the Panthers have to take a quarterback prospect in a draft where none of the quarterback prospects particularly stick out.
Right. We hear Deshaun Watson's no longer on the table. I don't think PJ Flick and the Flick tones are going to be the solution there. And this is – and what happens is when I get very down on coaching staffs and administrations, it's when they play the – procrastination game at quarterback, where year one with the Panthers, we don't have a quarterback, but we brought in Teddy Bridgewater to be a bridge. Year two, we're not going to pursue all these quarterbacks in this draft, which they could have done. They could have had, Mac Jones, et cetera. We're bringing in Sam Darnold because we're playing galaxy chess. Now year three, there's no quarterbacks out there, so I don't know, we're going to go try Dwayne Haskins or whatever. When you do that, it's not successful. We've got a 7-year contract and we'll get that. Then all of your opportunities early on to rebuild don't happen. And that's how you wind up a team like, say, the Bears, where a couple years later, you're like, where's the beef? When was this supposed to start?
Yeah, picking up that 5th-year option still doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Right. Even if you wanted to gamble and say that we're going to go with Sam Darnold long-term, even though you really didn't have a sense of what he was, especially considering his first 3 years with the Jets, I still don't think you take that risk and you play it out at the end of the season or something. But, yeah, their quarterback answer probably isn't in the league right now. But I also think I think they try their best to, take someone in this draft wherever that shakes out. I don't know how things are going to pan out with this quarterback class. It doesn't seem like any of them are really going to jump off the board, not having a 5-quarterback first round like we have – 2 of the last 4 years, but they'll probably stick with Sam Darnold for another year, which is unfathomable. Not unfathomable, but a very crazy idea to me. Just not – I think they have to at this point. They're kind of hamstrung cap-wise. They'll probably – whoever they take will probably have to sit for an indeterminate amount of time, and from there it's, however it shakes out. This defense is too good to keep getting held back by the offense.
Jay Billings says, Zach Wilson to Carolina after Darnold fails in Carolina and Wilson fails in New York, and then the two franchises end up merging and St. Louis gets an expansion team. Probably not going to happen.
No. That makes as much sense as just about anything else.
St. Louis is suing the NFL. They're not getting an expansion team anytime soon.
Right. Also, Robbie Anderson is not that good, folks. And also, Christian McCaffrey, I don't know what that's going to be moving forward. Also, the Panthers' offensive line is not very good. Everybody's dropping passes. There's a lot going on there. The quarterback's the biggest problem, but there are problems. It's not like this is a team waiting for Deshaun to come and save them.
Okay, we're ending with a fantasy trade question. Oh God, we are not the experts on this. You should come back on Friday with Scott Spratt, but you probably need to make this trade decision before Scott does the show.
Yes.
Would we trade Ekeler and Justin Jefferson for Fournette, Dalvin Cook, and Amari Cooper? Well, I don't know what Fournette replaces, so it's really Ekeler and Jefferson for Cook and Cooper.
Right.
And I don't think I would make that trade because Jefferson is pretty freaking awesome.
Fournette's not enough to sweeten that deal. I feel like Amari Cooper and C.D. Lamb kind of go off depending on the week. Dalvin Cook also never plays 16 games. I know he's already missed a couple here and there, but Alexander Madison seems like a good enough secondary option where they might slow play anything. At this point, Justin Jefferson is a huge target magnet, and Austin Ekeler is especially if I don't know if you're playing in a half point or a point PPR league, but Eckler's so valuable in that Chargers passing game. And like we've said, Chargers already have limited options offensively. I think Eckler's too valuable to lose at this point. Justin Jefferson's awesome. So I don't think what you're getting in terms of compensation is going to be good enough to justify it.
And Michael Gallup is coming back, so there's going to be even more not enough football situations for Amari Cooper and the Cowboys.
All right, folks, that does it for the Wednesday live stream. Thank you so much for joining us. Good stuff as usual. Thank you for joining us. We are here every weekday from 1 to 2 Eastern time. Thank you so much, Cale Clinton, for joining us today. Thank you, Mike Tanier, as always. Thank you to everybody for bringing your questions. Please don't forget to subscribe to us, especially if you watch us on YouTube or Twitch, or if you are listening to this as a podcast, rate the podcast. It helps us more people find the show. Tell your friends, tweet about how much you enjoy our live stream. Let's get us some more people watching it, man. It would be awesome. We'll be back tomorrow, Mike and I, with Brian Knowles previewing Week 8 in the NFL. Can't believe we are at Week 8 already. All right, that does it for today.